At 16, Olivia Carter inherited the one thing nobody in her family wanted: an abandoned pottery workshop. Her older brothers inherited the family home, the farmland, and every valuable antique their grandmother had owned. The lawyer finally unfolded the last page of the will. And to Olivia, he slid a small clay pendant across the desk. "Your grandmother leaves you Willow Creek Pottery." One brother laughed. "The place with the collapsing roof?" Her aunt smirked. "It hasn't sold a single pot in 20 years. Another relative shook his head. "You inherited a pile of broken clay." Their laughter echoed through the office. Olivia quietly picked up the pendant. It was shaped like a tiny potter's wheel. On the back, her grandmother Eleanor had carved 2 words: "Keep turning." 3 days later, Olivia packed a backpack, borrowed an old bicycle, and rode 15 miles to Willow Creek. The workshop stood beside a slow-moving river. A weathered brick kiln rose behind the building like an old chimney. Wild ivy covered the walls. Broken flower pots lay scattered across the yard. Tall grass surrounded cracked stone paths. Everything looked forgotten, except the large wooden sign still read, "Willow Creek Pottery." The front door stuck before finally opening. Dust danced through sunlight streaming from grimy windows. Rows of shelves still held unfinished bowls. Clay jars lined one wall. An old kick wheel waited silently in the center of the studio. It felt less abandoned then. Paused. Olivia smiled. "Hi, Grandma." Her voice echoed through the empty room. She spent the first night inside the tiny apartment above the workshop. Rain tapped softly against the roof. The familiar scent of clay and wood smoke filled the air. She slept better than she had in weeks. Every morning Olivia worked at the town bakery before sunrise. Every afternoon she returned to the workshop. She repaired broken windows, cleared weeds, scrubbed clay from work tables, rebuilt shelves, patched holes in the old kiln roof. She knew almost nothing about pottery, so she opened her grandmother's notebooks. Every page contained careful sketches, instructions, recipes for glazes, kiln temperatures, stories behind every design. Grandma hadn't simply made pottery, she had taught generations of local families. Olivia practiced every evening. The first bowl collapsed. The second cracked. The third exploded inside the kiln. She laughed anyway, getting closer. Months passed. Her hands grew steadier. Soon tourists passing through Willow Creek began stopping. Someone bought a mug. Another bought a vase. Then 5 more visitors arrived. Word slowly spread. One afternoon, an elderly man entered carrying a faded photograph. "My name's Arthur. I learned pottery here 50 years ago." He carefully placed the photograph on the table. Grandma Eleanor stood surrounded by smiling children. "My grandmother changed a lot of lives," Olivia said quietly. Arthur nodded. "She also guarded something." Olivia looked up. "What do you mean?" Arthur smiled. "She always said the workshop had 2 studios. I only ever found one." Before Olivia could ask another question, he stood. "As she told me, the second studio only opens for hands willing to get dirty." Then he walked away. The words lingered in Olivia's mind. 2 studios. She searched every room. Nothing. She measured walls, compared them with old floor plans. Still nothing. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm, until strangers began arriving. The first wore an expensive suit. "My name is Daniel Reeves. I represent Heritage Development." He looked around carefully before speaking. "We'd like to purchase this property. It's not for sale. We'll offer $4 million. Olivia blinked. "For this old workshop?" Daniel smiled politely. "It has historical value." "No." As he walked toward his car, he paused. "One question. Have you restored the old kiln yet?" "No." "I see." He drove away. Within 2 weeks, 3 more buyers arrived. Each offered even more money. $6 million. $8 million. Nearly $10 million. Each asked exactly the same question. Has the kiln been repaired? Now Olivia knew. The workshop wasn't what interested them. It was the kiln. The following weekend, she climbed onto the brick structure carrying fresh mortar and cleaning tools. Years of soot covered every surface. As she cleaned the firebox opening, her fingers brushed across something unusual. One brick looked different. It bore the same tiny potter's wheel symbol carved into Grandma's pendant. Olivia carefully pressed it. Nothing happened. She remembered the words. "Keep turning." She twisted the brick instead. Deep inside the kiln, stone gears rumbled. An entire section of the brick floor slowly rotated. A narrow staircase appeared beneath the kiln itself. Heart racing, Olivia grabbed a lantern. The hidden staircase descended into cool earth beneath the workshop. At the bottom stood a heavy oak door reinforced with iron bands. The clay pendant fit perfectly into a circular slot at its center. The lock clicked. The door slowly opened. Olivia stepped inside. She froze. The underground room stretched farther than the workshop above. Shelves reached from floor to ceiling. Thousands of handcrafted ceramic pieces filled the room. Ancient bowls, sculptures, decorative tiles, historic pottery from every region of the country. Glass display cabinets protected beautifully preserved masterpieces. The room looked less like a storage cellar and more like a museum. At the center stood a large pottery wheel carved from walnut. Resting upon it was a sealed envelope. Written across the front in Grandma Eleanor's familiar handwriting were 3 words. For Olivia only. She carefully opened it. The first sentence made tears fill her eyes. If you're reading this, then you restored the workshop before asking what it was worth. Olivia smiled through her tears. You knew me. She continued reading. The workshop isn't your inheritance. Suddenly, a deep click echoed through the underground museum. One entire wall of pottery slowly slid sideways. Behind it, another hidden chamber began to appear. The hidden wall slid completely aside. Olivia raised her lantern. Beyond it lay a second chamber unlike anything she had imagined. The room wasn't filled with pottery. It was filled with people. Not living people. Their stories. Portraits lined the walls. Beside each hung a handmade ceramic piece and a handwritten journal. Teachers, factory workers, veterans, single mothers, immigrants, children. Every journal told how pottery had helped rebuild a life after hardship. Some had escaped poverty. Others recovered from loss. Many had simply needed someone who believed in them. Grandma Eleanor had quietly taught them all. At the center of the chamber stood a large oak desk. Another envelope rested there. Read this last. Olivia unfolded the letter. If you've reached this room, then you understand something important. Clay remembers every hand that shapes it. So do people. Eleanor explained that Willow Creek Pottery had never been created to become a business. It had been built as a place where struggling people could begin again. Over 40 years, she had offered free classes to anyone willing to learn. Many students later became artists, teachers, business owners, and designers. Some returned years later, wanting to repay her kindness. Instead of accepting gifts, Eleanor encouraged them to contribute to something larger. Together they quietly established the Willow Creek Arts Trust. Olivia opened the leather folder beneath the letter. Inside were legal documents. She read the first page twice. Willow Creek Arts Trust. Current assets, $173,800,000. She stared silently. The trust had grown through licensed ceramic designs, museum partnerships, educational grants, art foundations, royalties from published teaching materials, and investments made by former students who never forgot where they started. The final clause explained everything. Ownership transfers only to the person who restores Willow Creek pottery before discovering what it protects. Olivia laughed softly. I would have restored it anyway. One final letter remained. It was written entirely in Eleanor's familiar handwriting. My dear Olivia, everyone else thought I made pottery. I didn't. I made confidence. The bowls were only excuses for people to discover what they could become. Tears rolled down Olivia's cheeks. She remembered being 8 years old, smashing her first clay mug. Instead of scolding her, Grandma had simply smiled. Good. Now make another. The final paragraph read, Never measure your life by what you create with your hands. Measure it by what you inspire in someone else's. At the bottom, Eleanor had written 2 words. Keep turning. Olivia pressed the letter against her heart. The following month, lawyers, historians, museum curators, and trust officials arrived. Every document proved authentic. Ownership legally transferred to Olivia. News spread quickly. Reporters crowded outside the workshop expecting another headline about a teenager inheriting millions. Instead, Olivia surprised everyone. The money stays in the trust. One reporter looked stunned. You aren't keeping it. I am. Just not for myself. Construction began that autumn. The old workshop was carefully restored. The historic kiln became part of a working museum. The hidden underground galleries opened as the Eleanor Carter Ceramic Heritage Center. Most importantly, every Saturday, free pottery classes returned. Exactly as Eleanor had once taught them. Children shaped their first bowls. Retired veterans learned sculpting. Single parents found creative work. Teenagers discovered confidence they had never known. The waiting list grew longer every month. Arthur returned carrying the faded photograph. This time he smiled at the sound of dozens of pottery wheels spinning together. "You found the second studio." Olivia laughed. It wasn't another room. No, it never was. It was everyone Grandma helped. Arthur nodded proudly. "You understand now." Years later, one of the wealthy developers returned. Daniel Reeves walked slowly through the beautifully restored workshop. Students worked quietly around long wooden tables. Visitors admired the museum below. Children laughed while shaping clay. "I'll offer 25 million. Olivia smiled. "You still think you're buying a building." Daniel looked around. "What else is there?" She pointed toward the classroom. "Watch." A nervous little girl accidentally collapsed her clay bowl. Her eyes filled with tears. Olivia walked over. She smiled exactly the way Eleanor once had. "Good." The girl looked confused. "Now." Olivia handed her another lump of clay. "Make another." The little girl smiled. Daniel watched silently. Then he understood. Without another word, he folded his offer and walked away. Near the entrance, Olivia mounted Grandma Eleanor's clay pendant inside a glass case. Beside it rested the first notebook, the original workshop key, the trust documents, and the handwritten letter ending with two simple words: "Keep turning." Visitors often asked what priceless treasure had been hidden beneath the old pottery workshop. They expected ancient ceramics, rare artwork, or the trust worth nearly $200 million. Olivia always gave the same answer. The greatest treasure wasn't hidden underground. It was hidden inside every person my grandmother refused to give up on. People once laughed when a 16-year-old inherited an abandoned pottery workshop everyone else believed was worthless. They saw cracked bricks, broken pottery, and an old kiln. Olivia saw a place where broken confidence had been rebuilt one pair of hands at a time. The hidden chamber didn't change her life because it revealed a fortune. It changed her life because it revealed her grandmother's true masterpiece. It wasn't made of clay. It was made of people. And as pottery wheels continued turning inside Willow Creek, each quiet rotation carried Eleanor Carter's greatest lesson into another generation. The most valuable things in life are never the ones you keep. They're the ones you help others create.